Hello, my name is Hamian, and I'm the director of the College Art Association, and I'm here today with Lynda Nochlin. Hello, Lynda.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah. You've been a member of CAA for a long time, and it's great to have this opportunity to chat with you. So let's talk a little bit about your background. I know you grew up here in New York, in Brooklyn. You earned degrees from Vassar, Columbia, and NYU. You taught at Columbia, Vassar, and Yale. You've won many awards from CAA. Most recently, you won the 2006 Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Award for writing in art. I know you've won a Guggenheim Fellowship. I know you're a fellow at the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Mm-hmm. You've run an honorary doctorate from Harvard.
Yep.
And a lot of it's really been about what you've been doing as far as thinking about, writing about, teaching about art. What brought you to art?
I was always interested.
Yeah?
When I was a little kid, I liked to paint and draw,
Uh-huh.
and I was very much encouraged to paint and draw, both by my mother and by my school. Mm. And being in New York, I had all these museums. There were a lot of other people who were interested in art that were around me, that were my friends and so on. It seemed sort of natural to go to museums. And I enrolled myself when I was 12 in the class for talented children at the Brooklyn Museum. Very interesting place.
You enrolled yourself, you said?
Yeah. I went with a portfolio and they said, come on.
Great.
Yeah. But I was always interested in art, music, dance, I did a lot of dance. The arts.
And apart from your writing, have you been drawing and making work through your adult life as well?
No.
Yeah.
I quit.
Yeah. How come you quit?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just got interested in writing about it rather than making it.
Right. Of course, you have a very long history of publishing, and there's certainly a lot of work that you've done with realism and with Courbet. What attracted you to that particular period and that particular genre?
Probably it was political, I think.
Oh.
It was during the McCarthy period that I came to maturity. I went to the Institute. And I really wanted to work on something that was anti-McCarthy, that was left.
Yeah.
I was the person of the left, and Courbet was the ideal subject for that.
Right. Tell me about what you remember of the McCarthy era and what was going on at the time and how artists and writers were
well, it really was a very oppressive period for people in intellectual and artistic pursuits. Even if they didn't come and get you, that was always a threat lying over.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I remember I began my Frick talk with a long quotation from Karl Marx, and people were dumbfounded. I remember my teacher, Friedlander, said, "Oh, Linda, you're so brazen." I mean, it was scary times. Yeah.
And watching the news today, do you see any similarities?
No, I think it's a different thing now. It's scary in a different way.
Yeah.
But you can say what you want, unless you're in government, obviously.
Right.
But I think it is a sort of different take. It's not good and it's not pleasant, but I think it's different.
Yeah. I noticed, I read that you said that you were introduced to feminism in the late 1960s. You were probably in your 30s at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And you wrote that you became a feminist virtually overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, I had been in Italy in 68, 69. And I came home and a friend came with all these publications and said, "Do you know about feminism?" What was it called? The Women's Movement. I said, "No." And she said, "Well, read this." And she left me off our backs and rather the somewhat crude broadsheets of the early feminist movement. And I stayed up all night reading, and I was a feminist the next day. Certainly. I mean, I always had been to some degree.
Sure.
But I could see now I could become formally, and as a part of an organization, a part of a movement. Mm. Yes.
Yeah. Do you still see the movement alive today?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. But of course, a lot of people I know happen to be feminists, so I don't know how alive it is otherwise.
Yeah.
But I think it still is,
Yeah. It's interesting. Right. I meet a lot of male feminists, too, which back in the beginning of the
movement,
it
would be unheard of.
It would be unheard of for a man to say he was a feminist. And now there are many of us who actually are happy to say that. Yeah,
well, but you think of the Women's March
right.
after the inauguration this year. It was enormous.
Right.
Enormous. And I mean, not every one of those people might be a self-pronounced feminist, but they're all feminists in the sense that they gathered together to show that they believed in something and were against other things.
Well, of course, there's the essay, Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists, that you wrote in 1971. I think Art News published that?
Yes.
Yes. And first of all, tell me about the title. How did you end up with that title? Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists?
I was at a Vassar graduation the year before, and I can't remember who it was. He had a gallery. He's a well-known gallerist. He said, well, Linda, I would love to show women in my gallery, but why are there no great women artists? Mm-hmm. It sort of almost wrote itself. It seemed all so hitched together, so logical.
And you addressed the question in the beginning of the essay about whether or not, or how many great artists there are regardless of their gender. Mm-hmm. The fact of what actually makes a great artist. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I mean, I refuse to see it as something inborn, sort of a little golden nugget, I would say. But, I mean, artistic greatness or artistic production depends so much on time, place, situation, etc. And it was no accident that up through the Renaissance, even the 18th century, that artists came in families.
Right.
Father artist, mother artist. You think of the Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach family practice. Mm. No.
You also write here, the fact of the matter is that there have been no supremely great women artists as far as we know. I'm happy you added that in, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Although there have been many interesting and very good ones who remain insufficiently investigated or appreciated.
Yeah, and I think that's been corrected to a certain extent.
Tell me about
today.
Some of the ones who've been discovered or investigated.
Well, I suppose Artemisia Gentileschi would be a primary one. Yeah. Who else?
What about women artists in the latter part of the 20th century or beginning part of the 21st century?
Yeah, I think women artists have definitely caught up as leaders, as being the interesting ones, making art and so on. I'm thinking of somebody like Joan Jonas, for example. Right. I'm thinking of somebody like Louise Bourgeois.
I was just going to ask you about Louise.
Obviously,
Judy Pfaff.
Judy Pfaff. Yeah. I mean, the list is so long. Right. I'm not saying they're all Michelangelos, but I personally am not a Michelangelo person.
Yeah.
But but they're really interesting, dynamic, and have changed the way we look at art, which I think is important.
And I guess in part it's because society has allowed them to some degree to be able to do that.
Of course, of course. Yeah. And they had to fight for it, too.
Of course. There's one last quote that I thought was interesting. I mean, there's so much of this essay. I hadn't read it for years. It's just so dense. It's so wonderful.
It is. I try to squeeze away.
You say here, most men despite lip service to equality, are reluctant to give up the natural order of things in which their advantages are so great. For women, the case is further complicated by the fact that, unlike other oppressed groups or castes, men demand of them not only submission, but unqualified affection as well.
Yeah, it's sort of hard.
Yeah.
I mean, say in terms of color. I mean, nobody demands that black people love and adore and cater to white people.
Right.
It's only gender that does that. And it's very confusing.
Mm.
If on the one hand there is somebody you love, live with, etc., yet who is part of a group or caste that is really denying you equality and denying you self-expression. So it's confusing, to put it mildly.
Mm. And of course, we have made, as we said, we have made progress, but how much progress do you think that we've made? I mean, how tough do you think it is for a young woman, 30 years old, starting out today?
Well, I think it's undeniably better. The conditions are better for a woman succeeding, and a lot of the major artists now certainly are women.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a sort of boys' club feeling about certain types of art and certain types of artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, equality has gone so far and no further, maybe.
Mm. Switching gears, but also on this one a little bit, obviously you've been involved in the Academy in art history for many, many years. What is your sense about the future for people graduating out of master's programs or PhD programs and getting jobs in higher education today? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a difficult market as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Although there are now galleries and museums throughout the country, it's not just a question of the East Coast and the West Coast and Chicago. I think there is a sort of spreading or a spread of art which allows for some jobs. But being an artist is tough.
Right.
No matter how you take it, I think it's getting ahead, finding a gallery, getting the proper amount of publicity, making sure you show. It's hard.
What about for scholars, for those who are getting their PhD, about being able to move their careers along? What advice would you have for them?
Be very, very smart. Write a lot. Have strong opinions. Just don't be a little library worm. No.
What are you working on now?
I have just finished a large book called Misère, about the representation of misery in the second half of the 19th century in France and England.
Wonderful.
That's at the publisher right now.
When should we expect to see it?
In the fall, I should think.
Yeah.
Thames and Hudson, as usual.
You excited about it?
Yeah, I am. And I laughingly said to my editor, "Are you going to be able to sell a book called Misère?" He said, "Misère by Lynda, Noclin." Yes. But it was fascinating, really interesting, and pulls together a lot of things I've been interested in all along. So it's both new territory, but based on elements that I've been interested in. Well, there's been relatively little investigation of the representation of the poor and oppressed. Middle class, Impressionism, etc., upper class before that, religious, high-minded themes, battles, but just the everyday lives of the poor and uninteresting, so to speak. Not much study.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that seems like a very timely topic for us.
Exactly. Well, I've thought of that too.
Yeah. I mean, as we think about how elections change and government change, and how the education system change, about access, I think it seems...
Absolutely. Yeah.
Seems very-
But it was certainly true in the 19th century,
Right.
early 20th. So I think it's an interesting book, and I hope other people find it interesting.
I look forward to seeing it.
Good.
Thank you so much for allowing us here in your home. It was great to chat with you
Oh,
about
good.
these things.
Oops.
And I look forward to seeing you at another CAA event soon, I hope.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you.
I would love to. Thank you.